Hello.
Hello, is this Brenda?
It certainly is. Dustin?
This is Dustin. How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, everything sounds good.
Okay, good.
Again, thank you so much for taking the time out today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
Well, first, Brenda, I'll ask you a little bit about your early days, how you got started and, working with Queen and Mount the Hoople. I mean, you had definitely a pretty amazing career right out of the gate.
Out of the gate is a good way of putting it, because that's kind of exactly how it sort of happened for me. The very beginnings was there was a local band here in Rhode Island that was very popular. And I used to love to go hear their music, and I loved to dance to their music, and never had any idea whatsoever that I would become involved with music myself. I grew up in a musical family, but it wasn't something that I thought was available to me. I guess I don't know if that's the correct word I want to use. As far as pursuing it as a career, I didn't look at it in that way. But it was, and one of the people in the band, it was the other female backup singer. I was friends with her, and it was through her that I wound up being a part of the band myself. I had gone off on a backpacking trip to Europe with some friends, and when I came back, they had been looking for me because they had landed a recording contract with CBS Records. Charles Kopperman had signed them, and they had two female backup vocalists. Sibylla was one of them, and the other girl had left the band. And Charles wanted to have the exact same lineup that he had seen and had signed. So Ken Lyons was not. Ken Lyon. There's no S on that. Ken Lyon was. He wasn't one to go to like the local musicians union or put an ad in the paper, or he'd rather work word of mouth and a friend of a friend kind of situation. And Sibylla remembered hearing me playing around with her guitar and singing a couple of songs that I had written. So she reached out to try and contact me to see if I'd be interested in doing this, and they weren't going to schedule the recording sessions for the album until they got somebody. So I was home. I think I got back after about 6 months of backpacking around different parts of Europe, and I think I was home about a week. And she contacted me and asked if I would be willing to give it a try. And Dustin, when I landed in America, I had no job, I had no place to live, and I had no money. I had one American dime in my pocket. And, what did I have to lose? I said, yeah, I'll give it a try. And, I mean, I always sang. I used to sing in choirs and choruses and things like that a lot, and I sang at home, writing my own music and listening to my parents and things like that. So I felt I had a good sense of harmonizing. It came naturally to me, and so it was a matter of me going to one of their gigs, and they had a weekend. They were doing a weekend gig at a place in Block Island. Kenny said, "Well, jump in and get your feet wet." And so I was familiar with the material because I'm having to go see them and before in the past, and so I just jumped up on stage with them and went for it.
It's incredible. I know eventually you wound up in the Rhode Island Music Hall of Fame, so I mean, it was almost like fate in a way that everything fell into place like that.
Well, that's the thing is, music was with me growing up as a child. It will always be with me all of my life. But my first love actually was art. I'm an artist as well, and that's why I say I didn't really have any strong aspirations towards music to become involved with it myself as a performer. But I feel as though the hands of fate put their hands on my shoulders and said, we're gonna send you in this direction. And I was given the opportunity, and so I went for it and said, okay, I'll give it a try. And that's kind of how it started. And the album was released in February, March, I think it was, of 1974, and CBS needed to put us out on a tour to promote the album, and they didn't have anybody at that period of time of the year. They didn't have anybody else that they could put us out with that was more in the pocket of the genre of what we were doing. We were an R&B band. and more blues, rhythm and blues kind of thing. And so they were kind of searching around, looking around, seeing what they could do. And Martha Hoople was getting ready to come over here to the States to do the American leg of his tour. And CBS said, "Oh, well, we'll put them on with them." And we didn't know until we got to we all had to converge and meet in Denver, Colorado, and that was April 14th, 1974, and for rehearsals and stuff like that before the tour started. And it wasn't until we were on our way to Denver that I found out that there was another band that was going to be joining us. And it was a crazy kind of situation. Martha Hoople had just been doing some shows with Queen on the European leg of the tour, and they almost did not do their leg of the tour over here unless they had Queen with them. CBS, and because they weren't on the same label at all. They were EMI Capitol. So they came over, and we found out, there was going to be 3 bands on the bill. And we were like, WTF, what? How's this going to work? I mean, 3 bands, what the? And so we got to Denver, and and once everybody was there, I think we were there before we were the first band that made it into the city or the town or whatnot. And when it came to doing the first set of rehearsals, that's when I'll never forget the day hearing them first. We had done our rehearsals, and then everybody in the group left and went back to the hotel, and myself and the drummer, Squeaky, we called him Squeaky because he always had his bass drum foot pedal was always squeaky, and so we called him Squeaky. But his name is Michael Quinn, incredible drummer. But he and I said he looked at me and said, "What do you think? You want to stick around and listen to some of this stuff?" And I said, "Yeah, let's check it out." So he and I were the only 2 public people per se that were sitting in the bleachers. We were at a school, we were at a college somewhere doing in a gym doing these rehearsals, and so we were sitting in the bleachers, and each one of the people, Brian May comes up on the stage and grabs his guitar and starts making little bits of noises, and Roger Taylor gets up behind the drums and tinkers around, and then Dee comes up and Freddie gets up on the stage, and they're all, they're sort of talking, and, there's all this blah, 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 and then all of a sudden, bam, they started going into 7 Seas of Rye, and I was like, holy shit, Michael and I almost fell off the bleachers. So it was pretty impressive, and we had no idea what to expect. We'd never heard of them, never heard the music. We didn't know what they were all about. But when those vocals that they screamed out and just their sound, and it was just, we were blown away. And we did that tour. We were on the bill with that tour for, I think collectively, we were like 3 weeks to a month on that tour. Was starting out in that level of the business, and which kind of, have you seen the movie Bohemian Rhapsody?
I have not. No.
It's a good movie. It's certainly worth getting the Golden Globe Award that it did the other night. But it's from my personal standpoint, it's a little out of context because in the movie, when they came over to America for the first time to do a tour, they set it up in the movie as if you got the impression that they were headlining over here, when in fact they weren't. We opened up for them, and they opened up for Martha Hoople.
Sure.
But anyway, it was a wonderful experience touring with them. We got to know each other really well, and I remained friends with them. Most of these years going by, there's chunks of times that we haven't talked to each other and whatnot, but we're still friends.
Yeah, that's awesome. I got to ask you, of course, we're in Minnesota here, how you made your way to this part of the woods from Rhode Island and got involved with Prince and the whole thing. I mean, that's not really a place, like a destination place, I guess, Minnesota for most people.
Well, I mean, the more popular Prince started becoming out in the world, more people started converging on Minnesota and Minneapolis, I mean, let's face it, Dustin, he was drawing people to Minnesota, musicians and music people, to see if they couldn't make their own way in music as well. For myself personally, I was in the right place at the right time. I was married to his longtime lighting and stage director and designer, Roy Bennett, and that's how I met Prince.
So it kind of seems like you didn't at all expect to be kind of swept up into the music side of things, with Vanity 6 and, actually performing when you got over there.
No, I didn't. I was, Prince was getting ready to go out on his Dirty Mind tour, and they were looking, his management had stepped into the offices of Zenith Lighting in L.A. looking for a lighting director, designer, stage designer that was willing to work on a small budget with an up-and-coming young black artist. And they didn't have anybody available at that moment, at that time. They were all out with other tours. But one of the CEOs, or one of the guys that owned the company, was very good friends with Roy, and had just had lunch with him that day. And when Stephen Fargnoli walked in to make his request, they said, "We don't have anybody here at this time, but we do know of somebody who's very talented, and he happens to be in town right now. If you'd like, we can give you his name and number, and then you can take it from there and see if that situation might work for you." And it did. So Roy was hired. He did the Dirty Mind tour, and it was on that Dirty Mind tour that I met Prince when he came to New York City to perform at where was it? I want to say the Palace. I think it was the Palace. Roy had asked me to come down to see him, and he says, "You've got to see this guy. He's really going to be very big. I just get a feeling he's going to be incredibly big, and he really has something to offer. And he's good. He's really good. I like him." And I said, "All right." So I went down, and I met Prince the morning John Lennon died. It was that day, the day after, the morning after John Lennon got shot. And the Beatles had been a very heavy influence on me musically. Sure. When I was growing up and looking, reaching out for my own sort of interest or my own genre of music that could be, something away from what I'd grown up with my parents. My parents were country musicians, and so it was kind of a traumatic thing that happened for me when I was in the elevator. We were going down to go out and get in the cab and go over to the theater and meet Prince and start the day and so on and so forth. And I get the news that John Lennon was shot and that he had died. I was losing it. And it was hard when I met Prince, trying to keep a straight face, and and I had no idea. When I looked that man in the eyes and shook his hand and said hi, of what my future was going to be after that with this man. And that's where it started for me with Prince. That's where I met him. After the controversy, after the Dirty Mind tour, when the Controversy tour was going to happen the following year, Roy went out, and he wanted me to come on the road with him. And I wasn't doing anything musically at the time. And I said, "Well, yeah, all right, but I would love to. I certainly want to be there." Roy and I had become married that summer. I said, "But I need to have something to do. I can't just be sitting there every single day and watching things happen. I got to have something. I've got to be there, a reason to be there besides." And so I wound up with like 4 jobs on the tour. And one of them was taking care of Prince's wardrobe, and another one was filming his shows every night with his video camera. He liked to look at the show afterwards every night to critique it and see what worked and what might need to be changed and stuff, stuff like that. And it was somewhere after a Christmas break, and when the tour, everybody met back up to finish the tour, that I was in his dressing room setting up all the wardrobe stuff one time, and I was singing along with a tape. He had a cassette tape of a first edited version of "Stand Back" by Stevie Nicks, and he was listening to it. She'd given it to him, hoping that they could collaborate together on something somehow. And when you're a singer and you've been a singer all your life, you're able to pick up what you're listening to pretty quickly. And I started singing along with it, and he's sitting there in the chair looking at me in the mirror like, "What?" And so I didn't know he sang. And I said, "Yeah, I like to sing." And that's how it started for me with Prince.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's almost, again, like just being in the right place at the right time. And, of course, The atmosphere around that time, I'm guessing, was pretty hectic. I mean, he had so many of his own albums and side projects, and you mentioned Stevie Nicks and helping out other people. So I mean, it seemed like on a daily basis there was probably stuff being added, changed, replaced. A lot of changes going on.
Oh yeah, there was constant flow, constant flux of change, and it was such an exciting time because of all that too. It was just things were moving along at such a pace, and I mean, that's what he was. That's what he was all about. That was his life. That was his heartbeat. Everybody at that time, and when that Purple family began, per se, we all rallied up and helped everything along in whichever little ways we could with each project.
Well, Brenda, what was it like for you as far as, being in Vanity 6 and then eventually Apollonia 6? I mean, you were really the one who had kind of the musical background. Did you find yourself kind of, I guess, taking the reins or maybe having to show the other girls what to do and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I did. Because of that, once he realized and found out that I had musical background, I had very, very little performance in terms of years length of stuff. All of the live performances I did with Tombstone, and that was really the only background I had. And it was pretty intense. I mean, I had friends who'd been doing it for years and years and years, and for me to come up in the ranks so quickly, I was very blessed to be able to have those opportunities and to, at the same time, whatever God gave me as a talent of my own, I was able to shine through. But it was of course there was difficulties. Of course there was frustrations. Of course there was times that was very hard to keep things together. Prince was so busy with so many different things. He needed to rely in each group of each situation. He needed to rely on somebody in that group to be able to help keep things going in a sort of supervisory way, if you want to put it that way. But with Vanity 6, that's when it started. With Apollonia 6, it was a whole different story, Dustin. With Vanity 6, it was the new situation. Vanity 6 was Prince's 1980s version of the Supremes. It's an idea he had for quite a long time of wanting to do something like that. And things fell into place with finding the people that wound up doing it and being in it. And he worked with us, and we worked to break the barriers. We broke down some barriers in a few ways. And that was, if you're asking or looking for me to make a comparison between the two bands, Vanity 6 was more of a breakthrough band, and it was more of an original band, in comparison to Apollonia 6. Apollonia 6 wasn't something that Prince had looked at as a long-term association, as a long-term project. Paddy Cotaro was hired to come in and play the part of Apollonia for the movie. And with all the stuff that was going on the tour, the Purple Rain tour, nobody expected that Purple Rain was going to do what it did in terms of popularity. But it did. It just blew open so big, so wide. That kept the music end of things going as kind of like a complete package, I guess you could say.
Sure.
But he had no intentions of keeping the Apollonia 6 thing going as a long-term project in any way. And to be honest with you, I was the only, as you mentioned, yes, I had aspirations to continue in a musical career. Patty wanted to continue with her acting. Purple, she really hadn't done very much in the white market. She comes from a Latino background, and she'd been doing quite a few things in the Latino market as far as film acting. And this helped to make a crossover for her to try and do some things in the American market. And she wanted to jump on that and continue with her acting career. And Susan wanted to finish her education. So Prince and I had talked for quite some time. He approached me about doing a solo project with me, him producing it, and both of us co-writing material, and him writing, me writing. And I certainly was up for it. And it just seemed like one little thing after another got in the way of it. Purple Rain, being as big as it was, he decided that he wanted to get into, he was doing the movies. He got into doing more of the movie stuff. And then there was the family, and then there was this, and then there was that. And he would still say to me from time to time, "You still want to do it?" "Yeah, I'm just waiting on you." I mean, and that happened all the way up until 3 months before he died. In fact, it happened 3 days before he died. It was the last time I talked to him. And 3 months then I saw him at Vanity's funeral. He talked about it then, and I said, "Absolutely, I'm ready. Let's do it." And so he said, "All right, I'll talk to you." And we had talked once or twice before the last time, and the last time I talked to him, we talked about material, and he said, "All right, let's sit tight. I'll be in touch. We're gonna do this, and we're gonna do it at Paisley Park." And 3 days later, he died, so it didn't get done.
Yeah, it seems like with a guy like Prince, it's almost a double-edged sword. He was so creative and so prolific, but then at times, almost kind of to his detriment in a way, as you mentioned, starting so many things at once, kind of spreading yourself thin, and maybe not seeing things to the end sometimes.
Well, there's so many people involved. You're never sure what's going to happen. It brings in an unpredictability factor very strongly. Things happen. And when that happens, then all kinds of actions can get out of hand. Some things can go in other directions. You don't know what to expect, and you can't keep your eye on everything all at the same time. It's impossible. When you're trying to continue with a career as big as his,
sure,
in his own right, for himself as his name as Prince.
Well, and of course, you mentioned Purple Rain, and really just kind of made him a superstar overnight in a way. And, that's where really the casual fans, I think, still really think of Prince as from that era. And do people still recognize you from the film? I know you had a pretty big part in it.
I'm sorry, you have to laugh to recognize me? Well, there's a couple of things. What I looked like then and what I look like now, well, that was 30-some-odd years ago. And as much as I am blessed that people tell me I look younger than my age, people in general don't recognize me. But I don't put myself out there that way.
Sure.
I have always relished my privacy, and that's one thing about stardom I never liked at all. There was a time when I couldn't walk the street in Detroit or even L.A. without having to have a bodyguard with me, or even New York for that matter. But just to keep people, once people recognize who I was, it was like, "Oh, yeah, I was kind of from there." And but there are times in certain circles when people will recognize me, and I find the reactions. I still kind of find it amazing, and people. My friends get mad at me sometimes. "What do you mean? Of course, people are going to still recognize you." And the reactions are, "Oh my God, it's you." It's bad. I know who you are. Yes, and oh my God, your music kept me alive as a teenager. And I am blessed for all those things, and I appreciate that. But at the same time, I don't know. It feels like a responsibility in a way, for one thing. That you're responsible for helping these people get through their life, and it's hard for me to explain what that feels like when you think of it.
Sure.
I'm not a messiah in any way, it's just, but I do appreciate, and even now with the music that I write and I put out there of my own stuff, if people enjoy it, I certainly enjoy doing it, and if people enjoy it and they do get something out of it that helps them through their day, whether it's just to hear a good song and it makes them feel good, then it's great. It's not my intention. I'd like to share what I have with the music.
Well, yeah, let's talk a bit about that. I know you took a step back for quite a while from music, but I know you're working on stuff now. You got the new version of Blue Limousine, and I've seen videos of you performing with your son. So it looks like you're back in it again with both feet.
Well, I've been doing that slowly but surely. Once my son, I put it all aside to raise him because I didn't want to be dragging him around on the road, backstage, everywhere. There's a lot of people out there who do, and some of it works for them, and some of it doesn't. And for myself personally, I really didn't feel I was going to be worth my salt as a mother by trying to do a career and try to raise a child and be a mother at the same time. So I put it aside. I put the career aside, and my son had no idea what I'd done until he was about 12 years old, and Prince came to town he was on tour, and he was playing. I think he was playing like 3 or 4 shows at the time it was a different name. I think it's called the Xfinity Center in Boston now. And Susan and I had actually come up from Trinidad for a visit. We hadn't seen each other in quite a while, and she came up, and we went up to see Prince, and he wanted to meet Dylan, my son, and so he sent a limousine down the next day to pick us all up and bring us up to the show, and he put us up in a hotel in Boston for the night, and so he could spend the time with us and spend the time with my son. And so I kind of had to break the news to my son by that time, and say, okay, well, I used to do a little bit different life before you were born, and I had kind of been bringing him, he'd hear me playing guitar when he was about 15 years old. He really, after meeting Prince at 12, before that I started picking up my guitar again, and I started kind of playing around with some ideas for some songs and stuff, and so he knew from that standpoint that I was musical, but it really, I guess it was a rude awakening when I took him to a Prince show. And afterwards, after the show, we met Prince at a designated place he wanted us to meet him at, and spent the next 5 or 6 hours just playing pool, having something to eat. Susan and I could have jumped off the bridge. Nobody would have known it because he was so, involved with his discussions with my son and having a good time with Dylan. And Dylan had a great time. So, from that point on, my father always said to me, be careful what you put out there to the universe with your ideas and wishes and desires, because you just might get what you want. So you better make sure it's what you want, because it's likely to come your way. And so I started thinking, the older Dylan got and a little bit more time I had to myself, I started thinking about music and if I shouldn't take any steps to get back involved with it in any way. And sure enough, my father was right. Next thing I knew, I'd gotten a phone call. Medrick Belair was going to be putting together this show honoring Ken Lyon in the 40-some-odd years that he'd been in the music business. And by having this big show where the beginning of the show would start with Ken's beginnings in the folk genre, and then moving on from there and all the different things that he did and put together, and all the way up to the highlight of the night was the Tombstone band that I was in that had the contract with CBS with the record and the tour and all that.
Sure.
And it was the first time on stage again in 15 years, something like that. And I played, there's one song on that album that I wrote and performed, a song called Hold Me Closer. And I stepped out on stage to play it, and I'm getting chills thinking about it now. The whole audience stood up, and I couldn't believe it. I'm getting a little emotional right here at the moment, excuse me.
No problem.
It was a pretty big moment. I had no idea, I'd been away. When I gave up the music business to raise Dylan, I put everything aside. I didn't even listen to anything but like classical music or stuff like that, or whatever was background music and the things my son was watching. I put it away. I really put it away. I had no contact with anybody. I had no idea what's going on out there, and I had no idea that when that kind of time goes by, Dustin, you feel it's only natural that people will just forget, or they might remember you from time to time, and it wasn't important that they forgot or didn't or remembered me. I just I didn't think of it. I didn't think that they would. I figured they'd moved on to other people and other things. But when that happened, it told me that they hadn't forgotten. And so I spent the next 3 years, doing some shows with Tombstone. The show was such a success that it really began this whole new momentum. And I worked with them for about 3 years, and then it kind of petered out. It wasn't something I wanted to do on a long-term basis with them. I had started writing, and we were doing some of my originals with the band. And one of the girls that was working in the band with us, she had her own recording studio set up at her house, and she kept saying to me, "Have you got tracks recorded of these songs?" And I said, "No, I don't." And she said, "You gotta put these down, even just for yourself, so you don't forget them, so you have them." And I didn't do it. And then finally one day I just said, "Lori, I can't do this. I don't have the kind of wherewithal to do studio time." And she said, "You helped me in so many ways. I'll do it for nothing." So I said, "What?" Ears picked up on that and said, "Are you serious?" And she said, "Yes, absolutely." So I thought about it, and I said, it started out as it was only going to be like this EP kind of thing of about 5 or 6 songs, and then, take it from there. And the more I worked on it and the more I thought about it, I just said, if I'm going to do anything at all with this, I'm not going to do it to keep on my shelf in my bedroom or something. I'm going to see what happens with this. I was writing at the same time and putting things on as I wrote them, and then Lori was saying, "Well, what about this track and what about that track? You got to have this one, that we did with Tombstone." And it wound up being 10 songs on the first solo disc that I did. And I put it out. I did a series. It was 3 or 4 videos that were like just really basic, raw. It was one afternoon in an art gallery by where I live that said, "Oh, you want to use the gallery for the afternoon? Yeah, you can have it." And Lori and the other girl that did background vocals on some of the songs, and my piano player, Mark Tabor, the 4 of us, with a young man by the name of Adam Waz, who was the son of a friend of mine and had all these aspirations to get into music video stuff and filming things. I said, you want to try this?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "All right." So it's raw, it's out there. And I just said, "I don't care, let's just see what happens. We'll throw it against the wall, and see what sticks." And the reaction was a lot more intense, and bigger than I expected it to be. And I thought, okay, all right, so Prince audience still remember, and still, they just, "Oh my God, she's doing something again." So I said, okay, just taking a step at a time, Dustin.
Yeah, that's great. Well, what's the best way for the listeners out there to get a hold of some of the new stuff you're working on? Do you have a website or anywhere you direct them to?
I do have a website. It's up, and it's Brenda.Bennett. Oh my God, I just put it up just the last couple of months. But to any of the music, I do have a Facebook page, and I put as much stuff on the Facebook page to let people know that stuff is out there. The newest album, once again, you can get it through CD Baby and all the usual engines, Apple iTunes, Rhapsody, Spotify, all that stuff. It's out there. And I'm putting more and more. The website is a work in progress. It's BrendaBennett.net for the website, and there's quite a bit of information in there. There's the bio and discography of things that I've worked on and projects I've done in the past, and there's contact information, press release stuff, and news about whatever music is happening. It's probably not as up to date as it should be, but there's a good chunk of stuff in there for people to check out.
Awesome. Again, Brenda, I'm a huge fan, and it's been a real treat talking with you today. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right, bye-bye.